If you've ever had someone say to you, I hate salespeople, or I don't want to be sold to, this video is going to change everything for you, because I'm about to show you how to turn the most sales-resistant prospect into your easiest close. Now, I know what you're thinking. Jason, if someone hates salespeople, why would they even want to talk to me? Here's the thing. They're not talking to you because they hate sales. They're talking to you because they have a problem and they need it solved. Okay? The hatred of salespeople is just their defense mechanism, right? Now look, as a former psychiatric nurse, I can tell you that defense mechanisms exist for one reason: to protect someone from getting hurt again. So if someone hates salespeople, it means that they've been burnt before, right? And once you understand that psychology, you can actually use their resistance to make the sale easier, not harder. Now, let me take you back to my nursing days. We had patients who were there who were what we called treatment resistant. They'd been through multiple therapies, they'd seen different doctors, tried various medications, and nothing worked. So when they came to us, they were obviously naturally hostile and defensive and convinced that we were just going to disappoint them like everybody else did. Sound familiar? Look, that's exactly what happens with sales-resistant prospects. They've been pitched to by pushy salespeople before, right? They've bought products that didn't work, been promised the world and was delivered nothing, okay? So their brain has created a protective mechanism called I hate salespeople to avoid them getting hurt again. Catch my drift? Now look, here's what I learned in psychiatry that most salespeople never understand. Resistance isn't rejection. Resistance is actually engagement. When someone says, I hate salespeople, they're not saying, go away. They're just saying, prove to me you're different, my friend, right? Now, the mistake most salespeople make is that they try to convince or overcome the resistance. You know, they argue with them, or they try to convince the person that not all salespeople are bad, or they go immediately for the pitch to prove they're different. This is the worst possible approach because it confirms their belief that you're just another pushy salesperson. Right? Now, instead, you need to do what we did in psychiatry with treatment-resistant patients. You need to validate their resistance. You join their world and you let them lead. You know, you let them lead. Right? Tell them, I'm going to show you exactly how to do that in this video, right? Now, look, I've developed a 5-step system for dealing with people who hate salespeople, and it works so well that these prospects often become my best client, okay? Now, here's the system. Step 1. I want to validate their resistance. The first step is to validate resistance immediately. When someone says, I hate salespeople or I don't want to be sold to, your response should be, I completely understand. If I were you, I'd probably feel the same way. You've probably been burned before by people making promises they couldn't keep. What you're doing here is you're joining their world. Instead of fighting it, you're saying you're right. You're right to feel that way. Instead of, you're wrong to feel that way, they're right, okay? This immediately disarms their defense mechanism because you're not the enemy. You're on their side, all right? Step 2, share your anti-sales philosophy, right? How do you do that, right? You do that by saying something like, actually, I hate pushy salespeople too. And that's why I don't sell to people. I help them to buy. There's a big difference. I'm only here to give you the information so you can make an informed choice. And if it's not right for you, I'll be the first person to tell you. Now you've positioned yourself as an anti-salesperson. You're not trying to sell to them. If anything, you're trying to help them avoid making another bad decision. This is exactly what they want to hear, right? Now, step 3 is to give them complete control of the conversation. You say, look, I don't know if this is what I do is right for you or not. Why don't you tell me about your situation and I'll give you my honest opinion about whether I can help you or not. And if I can't, I'll tell you exactly who can. This is the opposite of what they've ever been told by any salesperson, right? Instead of taking control and launching into a pitch, you've given them the power to decide what happens next. Sales-resistant people crave control. So when you give it to them, they relax, they drop their shoulders and chill out a bit, all right? Step 4 is to become their consultant, not their salesperson. You ask diagnostic questions like, what have you tried before that didn't work? What specifically went wrong? What would need to be different this time for you to feel confident moving forward? You see where I'm going with this? You're not trying to sell to them. You're not trying to sell their solution per se. You're trying to understand their problem. And here's the key. You genuinely listen to their answers. You take notes and you ask follow-up questions. You show them that you actually care about solving their problem and you're not just there to make a sale, all right? Now, step 5, all right? The step 5 is what I call the reverse psychology close, okay? After you've understood their situation, you say something like, based on what you've told me, I'm not sure you're ready for what I do. My program requires a high level of commitment, and given your past experiences, you might be better off trying something else first. What happens next is magical. The next person, the person who hated salespeople suddenly starts selling themselves on why they should work with you. They start overcoming their own objections because you've taken away the pressure and made them chase you instead of you chasing them. Catch my drift? Now, let me give you a real life example from my own business. Last month, I had a prospect who booked a call, and within the first 30 seconds, he said, look, I'm going to be honest with you. I hate salespeople. I've been burned by 3 different business coaches in the past 2 years, and I'm only on this call because my wife made me do it. Now look, most salespeople would have immediately gone into damage control mode, where they would have said something like, hey, not all salespeople are bad, or let me show you how I'm different. But I did the opposite. I said, I completely understand. And honestly, I probably would have saved you from at least 2 of those bad decisions if you talked to me first. The coaching industry is full of people who overpromise and underdeliver. So you're smart to be skeptical, okay? Now look, this immediately, look, his whole demeanor changed. His shoulders relaxed, he leaned forward and he said, finally someone who gets it. I had joined his world instead of fighting it. And then I said, look, I hate pushy coaches too. And that's why I don't want to convince anyone to work with me. I'm only here to give you information so that you can make an informed choice. If what I do isn't for you, I'll be the first person to tell you. In fact, based on what you're telling me has happened to you in the past, you might not be ready for my level of program yet. I don't know. Now look, he was really intrigued. He said, what do you mean I might not be ready? So I explained, my program requires complete and utter commitment and implementation. Given that you've been disappointed before, you might be gun shy about fully implementing what I teach. And if you don't implement, you won't get the results. And then you'll blame me like you blame the others, right? By the end of the call, he was convincing me why he should be accepted into the program. He said, no, I'm different. Things are different this time. I'm ready to do whatever it takes. Those other coaches, they didn't give me a real system like you're describing. Now that day, my friend, he invested £15,000. And the best part, 6 months later, he sent me a message saying it was the best investment he'd ever made in his business. Why? Because I didn't try to overcome his resistance. I used it to make the sale. I joined his world. Now let me explain the psychology behind why this approach works so well with sales-resistant prospects. First, it's based on a principle called psychological reactance. When someone feels like their freedom, to choose is being threatened, they automatically resist, right? Every pushy salesperson they've encountered has triggered this reactance. So their brain has learned to associate salespeople with that threat. Now, when you validate their resistance instead of fighting it, you're not triggering that reactance. You're actually reducing it. You're saying freedom to choose is safe with me, which allows them to put their guard down and allows them to relax a little bit. Second, it uses the principle of reverse psychology. When you tell someone they might not be ready for your program, you're creating what psychologists call forbidden fruit syndrome. Suddenly, they want what they can't have. Third, it positions you as the expert, not the salesperson. When you say you might not be ready, you're demonstrating that you have standards too, and that you don't just work with anyone. This creates immediately what we call the expert authority. They start to see you as someone who can help them, not someone who just needs their hard-earned cash. Catch my drift? And finally, it gives them what they crave the most, which is control. Sales-resistant people have been manipulated before, so they're hypersensitive to any attempt to control them. When you give them complete control of the conversation, they actually finally relax, and then they listen to what you're saying. Now, let me give you some advanced techniques for dealing with specific types of sales resistance, all right? Now, look, if someone says, I've been burned before, or something like that, you respond with, of course you have. The industry is full of those who make promises that they can't keep. What specifically went wrong? Because I want to make sure that I don't repeat those mistakes, okay? If someone says, I don't trust salespeople. You say, neither do I. That's why I stopped being one. I'm a consultant now. My job is to tell you the truth, even if it means you don't work with me, okay? Now, if someone says to you, I don't want to be pressured, you respond with, perfect, because I don't pressure anyone. In fact, I'm probably going to try to talk you out of working with me. Most people aren't ready for what I do. Notice the pattern? You're always agreeing with their resistance, then redirecting it in a way that positions you as different from everyone else. Look, by doing that, that makes you an authority. Now, here's another advanced technique, the inoculation method. Early in the conversation, you say something like, I'm going to tell you something that might surprise you. I'm probably going to try to talk you out of working with me today. Why? Because I only work with people who are absolutely certain they're ready for change in their life. And based on what you've told me about your past experiences, you might not be there yet, okay? This does two things. First, it removes all the sales pressure because you've told them that you're going to try and talk them out of it. Secondly, it creates curiosity. They want to know why you might not want to work with them. No one likes to feel rejected, right? The key to all of these things is authenticity though, okay? You can't fake this approach, right? You have to genuinely believe that you're trying to help them. You have to believe that you're trying to help them make the right decision, even if that decision isn't to work with you. And you have to do that. And then when you have this mindset, everything else just flows naturally. Now, let me tell you the biggest mistakes I see when salespeople are trying to use these techniques. Mistake number one. They try to use this as manipulation tactics instead of a genuine approach. Sales resistance people have developed, a BS, what they call BS detectors, okay? If you're not being authentic, they'll sense it immediately and shut down even harder. So be authentic. Mistake number two, they give up too quickly. When someone says they hate salespeople, most people immediately go into the defensive or they try to end the conversation quickly. But remember, resistance is engagement. They're still talking to you, which means there's still hope, my friend, all right? Mistake number three, they don't follow through on their promises. If you tell someone you'll be honest, even if it means that they won't work with you, you better be prepared to actually tell them that they're not a good fit, if that's the case, right? Look, your credibility depends on this, all right? Mistake number four, they try to rush the process. Sales-resistant people need time to trust you. Don't close them on the first call unless they're absolutely ready. Sometimes the best thing you can do is at the end is actually schedule the next logical step, which is another call. And mistake number five, they don't address the root cause of the resistance. Remember, sales-resistant people, they don't hate you. They just hate being manipulated and lied to or disappointed. Address those specific fears and watch the resistance melt away. So there you have it, my friends. The complete system for selling to people who hate salespeople. Validate their resistance, share your anti-sales philosophy, give them control, become the consultant, and use reverse psychology to make them chase you. But here's the thing. Knowing these techniques and implementing them correctly are two different things. It takes practice to master the tonality, the timing, and the authenticity to make this approach work. And that's exactly what I teach in my Closing Incubator program. It's a 12-week intensive where you work one-to-one with me directly through every single aspect of handling prospects, including extensive role play sessions where I practice these exact scenarios until they become second nature to you. Look, I've used these techniques personally to generate over 22 million in sales, often with the most resistant prospects you can possibly imagine, and I want to teach you how to do the same. If you're tired of losing sales to prospects who hate salespeople, if you want to turn the most difficult conversations into your easiest closes, then comment resistance below and I'll send you my complete sales resistance playbook. It includes word-for-word scripts for every single type of resistance you'll ever encounter. And if you're serious about mastering these advanced psychological techniques, if you want the complete system with live coaching, practice sessions, then look, let's have a conversation about the Closing Incubator. Because look, here's the truth. Sales-resistant prospects often become your best clients once you know how to handle them correctly, all right? They're not resistant because they don't want to buy. They're resistant because they don't want to be sold to. And there's a huge difference. So comment resistance below and let me show you how to turn every I hate salespeople into when can we start, all right? Remember, people who resist you are often the ones who need you the most. Don't let their defense mechanism stop you from helping them solve their problems. So comment resistance below. I'll catch up with you soon.